Imagine stepping into a marriage with someone you barely know, someone you've only met a handful of times before walking down the aisle. On that very first night, you realize this man is so distant, so emotionally unavailable, that even the big, empty house feels colder, lonelier than you ever imagined. You can't help but ask yourself, will he ever love me? Can love even grow in a marriage that starts with such a wide, invisible gap between us? From the very first days, everything about our marriage felt unfamiliar, almost alien. We had barely spent time together before the wedding, just a few awkward meetings, polite conversations, and forced smiles. He kept a distance, spoke in short, neutral sentences, and never lingered in a way that suggested warmth or intimacy. The engagement ring he gave me was cheap, plain, nothing like I had dreamed of, and yet it became a symbol of everything I feared, that maybe this relationship would remain cold, distant, and hollow. I knew why he chose this marriage. He had just come out of a long-term relationship, and this was his way forward. I tried to reassure myself, as long as he's honest, as long as he won't cheat, maybe we can make this work. But those early days, I felt like I was living with a stranger. The intimacy we shared felt mechanical, routine, almost like going through the motions. I could touch him, lie next to him, but it didn't warm me. Every hug felt hollow, every glance felt rehearsed. Evenings were the hardest. I'd sit quietly, watching him read or scroll through his phone, feeling the weight of an invisible wall between us. I wanted to speak, to reach for him, to connect, but fear held me back. I couldn't tell if he felt any loneliness at all, or if he was perfectly content with the cold distance. Sometimes I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, heart tight with anxiety, wondering if he even noticed me. And yet, in those moments of doubt, I started to notice small details. The way he quietly sipped his morning coffee, the subtle frown when concentrating, the tiny smile that appeared when he thought no one was watching. Those tiny glimpses became small sparks of hope, like faint stars in a cloudy sky. I caught myself thinking, maybe, if I am patient, I can find a way into his heart. There were nights when I'd sit alone in the quiet kitchen, gripping a mug of tea, my eyes fixed on the steam curling upward, asking myself, am I enough? Will he ever truly see me? Will he love me for who I am? My heart ached with a strange combination of longing and fear. I wanted him to care, to notice, to respond, but I was terrified that he never would. The silence was heavy. The house, which should have felt like home, felt like a stage where we were both performing roles we hadn't rehearsed. I began to realize that building a relationship wasn't just about proximity or shared routines. It was about trust, patience, and the courage to be vulnerable. I had to learn to give that trust, and hope that he could meet me halfway, in that strange liminal space between loneliness and hope. I understood something important. These cold, quiet early days, as painful as they were laying the foundation. And somewhere, beneath the distance, beneath the silence, there was a possibility that love could grow, if only we both dared to let it. After those first few lonely months, something began to shift, almost imperceptibly at first. One evening, he noticed how exhausted I looked after a particularly long day at work. He quietly mentioned that I didn't have to work anymore, that he could take care of everything. He made it clear that it was entirely my choice, but in that moment, I felt a mixture of relief, surprise, and something like gratitude swelling in my chest. I hadn't expected him to notice me in that way. I hadn't expected him to care. But suddenly, There was a crack in the wall he'd built around himself. I realized that perhaps his coldness wasn't a rejection of MIT, was a shield, a way to protect himself after heartbreak. Deciding to take a break from work was a huge step for me. It wasn't about giving up my independence. It was about giving myself the time to invest in something new, us. I started paying attention to the little things, learning his favorite meals, setting up the house just the way he liked it, leaving small notes here and there. Each act was like a quiet prayer, a hope that he might notice and maybe, slowly, warm to me, and he did, in his own subtle ways. The first time I saw him smile genuinely at something I did, it hit me like sunlight breaking through clouds. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't a declaration, but it was enough to make my heart skip a beat. That tiny acknowledgement, just a nod, a quiet thanks, was proof that he saw me, that I mattered. We began to share small moments together, moments that didn't need words. I'd bring him a cup of coffee in the morning, and he'd glance up from his book, catch my eye, and for a brief second, the world felt less lonely. He still wasn't affectionate in the traditional sense, no hand-holding, no sweet I love yous, but there was a warmth emerging, like a slow burn beneath the surface. At first, I doubted myself. I questioned whether I was enough, whether he could ever truly love me. But slowly, I realized that love wasn't always an immediate rush of passion. Sometimes it started as something small, an awareness, a consideration, a quiet act that said, I see you, I care about you. And those small moments were starting to add up. One evening, after dinner, I caught him lingering in the kitchen as I cleaned up. I asked him a question about his day, almost casually, and he paused, then answered with a tone that carried just enough warmth to make me feel noticed. That night, I went to bed with a flutter in my chest I hadn't felt in months. For the first time, I could imagine a future where he and I weren't strangers sharing a house but to people slowly. Learning to understand each other, I began to realize that perhaps the relationship wasn't about grand gestures or immediate chemistry. It was about patience, observation, and the courage to meet someone where they were emotionally. I started paying attention to him not just physically, but emotionally. I noticed his habits, his quirks, the way he sometimes laughed quietly to himself, the way he frowned when he was deep in thought. Every little detail became a thread, weaving me into his world, and slowly, I felt a connection building where there had once been emptiness. Even in those quiet, tentative moments, a shift was happening. He was no longer just the man I had married out of obligation. He was becoming someone real, someone present. And I, in turn, was learning to care for him not just out of duty, but out of a growing, tentative affection that felt like it might become something deeper if we both gave it a chance. By the end of those weeks, I felt a sense of cautious optimism. It wasn't love yet, not the kind that makes your heart race, but it was hope, and that hope was enough to keep me invested. I was starting to see that perhaps, in time, the cold walls could thaw, and what we were building together could become something real and lasting. One evening, completely out of the blue, he asked me, "Do you want to go for a walk with me?" I was caught off guard. In those first few months, our interactions had been minimal, just meals, brief exchanges, and silent cohabitation. But this time, his voice carried something I hadn't noticed before: warmth, gentleness, and genuine care. It was subtle, but it was there, and it made my chest tighten in a way I couldn't ignore. We walked under the glow of streetlights, the cool night air brushing against our skin, the soft rustle of leaves under our feet mixed with the distant hum of the city, which somehow faded into the background. In that moment, it felt like the world had shrunk just for us. He reached out and held my hand, gently, not tugging or forcing, just letting me know he was present, that he was there, and that I wasn't alone. My heart skipped a beat. From that first walk, evening strolls became our small tradition. We explored new coffee shops, caught light-hearted movies, or simply sat on park benches, gazing at the moon and talking about everyday things that suddenly felt magical. Every small gesture, a squeeze of my hand, a touch on the shoulder, a quiet smile sent a rush of warmth through me. I realized for the first time that I was being truly seen, truly cared for. He began to notice the details about me that I didn't even think mattered. The way I fidgeted with my cup when I was nervous. The books I lingered on at the bookstore. The particular flavor of tea I preferred in the evenings. He remembered everything. And when I talked about my long or stressful days, he didn't interrupt. He didn't judge. He just listened, nodded, and made me feel heard. Slowly, I understood that love isn't always about grand gestures or expensive gifts. It's about attentiveness, presence, and care that comes from the heart. Our connection started to blossom in ways I hadn't expected. Smiles lingered longer, hugs felt natural instead of awkward, and he would sometimes surprise me by taking me to a little hidden spot I loved without me ever mentioning it. There were moments when we just sat in silence together, yet the quiet felt warmer than words. It was a happiness I had never known before, not the dramatic, movie-style kind, but a calm, grounding joy from feeling understood and cherished. One night, we walked along a small path by the lake, the moonlight dancing on the rippling water. He stopped, turned toward me, and looked straight into my eyes. That gaze, steady, warm, and safe, spoke volumes. I felt it deep in my chest. This was love taking root. The cold walls of the early months were slowly dissolving, replaced by a quiet intimacy that made everything feel right. As the weeks passed, our walks and outings became longer, richer, more playful. He'd point out little things I had never noticed: the pattern of light reflecting on the lake, the smell of flowers in a hidden garden, the sound of birds settling in for the night. And I noticed him to how his eyebrows would furrow slightly when he was deep in thought, how his lips curved into a small, almost shy smile when he was amused, how his hand felt warm and protective when it brushed mine. With each shared experience, I felt my heart opening wider. What had started as routine, almost mechanical interactions was transforming into genuine affection. And with every laugh we shared, every subtle touch, every small act of kindness, I could feel the distance between us shrink. It was like discovering a new color in a familiar landscape, unexpected, breathtaking, and quietly powerful. Love, I realized, doesn't always arrive in bursts of fireworks. Sometimes it creeps in quietly, like a tide that slowly swells, unnoticed at first, until one day it's everywhere. That's what was happening with us. Each small moment, each act of attention and care was building a foundation. And in that foundation, I began to feel safe, valued, and most importantly, loved. By the end of those early walks and shared evenings, I knew one thing for certain. Our relationship was no longer a cold arrangement. It was growing into something real, tangible, and filled with the promise of what could come. And for the first time, I allowed myself to imagine a future with him, not just living under the same roof, but truly being partners, lovers, and companions in life. One evening, just before our first wedding anniversary, he sent me a message out of the blue. "Do you want to go for a walk with me?" This time, I didn't hesitate. There was something different in his voice, warm, gentle, but also filled with determination that made my heart skip in a way I couldn't ignore. We walked under the soft glow of streetlights, the cool breeze brushing through our hair. The faint scent of flowers from nearby gardens mingled with the rustle of leaves under our feet and the shimmering sound of water from the lake, creating a peaceful symphony around us. He stopped at a small stone pier by the water, a place I often went to when I needed quiet. I had never told him about it. He smiled, took my hand, and said, "I know you like this spot. I wanted to share it with you." My heart raced. For the first time, I truly felt his tenderness and genuine love. He pulled me close, and I felt his warmth, our breaths slowly sinking. The world around us seemed to disappear, leaving only us and the emotions surging between us. Then, unexpectedly, he dropped to one knee and opened a small box. "I have something I want to tell you," he said, his voice trembling slightly, but his eyes steady and determined. "I'm sorry for being distant those first months. Thank you for your patience and for loving me. I love you." I couldn't believe my ears. His words hung in the quiet of the lake, like a melody awakening every part of me. He opened the box to reveal a sparkling, elegant diamond ring completely different from the first one he had given me. Tears welled up in my eyes, my heart overflowing. He handed me a bouquet of flowers he had hidden since morning, and his warm smile was full of love. We held each other tightly, speaking no words, only feeling. In that moment, all the lonely, cold, and anxious months melted away. We had found each other. Love was no longer a cautious dance, it was a full, intense, and overwhelming presence in the days that followed. He never stopped surprising me. Flowers on the table, sweet messages, sudden hugs from behind, and simple yet heartfelt dinners. He no longer kept his distance. His smiles and glances were always full of care, and every "I love you" made my heart melt anew. Our love had become alive, vibrant, and real. We explored the city together on weekends, tried new restaurants, walked by the lake, and even just cooked together in our tiny kitchen. But every moment felt meaningful. Every gesture, the holding of hands, a gentle touch on my shoulder, a tender gaze was a testament to the deep love we shared. One morning, I stepped out onto the balcony, and he appeared with a small bouquet of wildflowers from the local market. "I saw you liked these," he said with a smile. I laughed, my heart swelling with happiness. Each day, each little moment, reminded me that real love doesn't always come from grand gestures. It comes from attention, presence, and the quiet care of someone who chooses you every day. The hardships, the doubts, and the distance of the early months had now faded into a distant memory. What remained was a love that was whole, safe, and overflowing with joy. I knew we had overcome the first tests, and the love we had built through small, tender steps had become a solid foundation for our future together. We had just returned home from our anniversary evening, my heart still floating with happiness, a smile lingering on my face. I opened my phone to look at the photos from the night every moment, his smile, his tender gaze, when suddenly a message from an unknown number appeared. My hands trembled as I opened it, and my heart nearly stopped. It was her, his ex. The first message made me gasp for air. Harsh words, insults, calling me a homewrecker and not good enough, saying that she was the one who deserved the ring, the love, and that I was just a temporary replacement. Then I opened the next message, and my blood ran cold. A video, them together, laughing, smiling, their eyes full of love, gentle touches, subtle kisses. I froze, unable to move or breathe. Suddenly, the past wasn't just a memory. It was vivid, alive, and haunting me. My chest tightened, my heart ached. I ran into the room where he was, tears streaming down my face, my voice trembling. "Did you cheat on me? What did you do with her?" He looked at me, calm but worried, his hands shaking slightly as he pulled me into his arms. "No, my love, nothing like that. It's all in the past. You are my present and my future. I have never not loved you, but the images from the video were burned into my mind. I felt small, inadequate, and easily replaceable. A wave of jealousy and fear surged through me, accompanied by a deep, unrelenting anxiety. I asked him to leave, to give me space to breathe and think. He sighed, hugging me one last time, looking at me with sorrow, but he left quietly, promising he would do nothing wrong. The following days were sleepless nights, filled with tears. I called my 2 closest friends, sharing every detail, seeking comfort. Yet the video haunted me. The laughter, the love, the intimacy they had shared, it replayed in my mind endlessly. I felt torn between love and pain, my heart aching with every memory. When he returned, I couldn't even speak. I collapsed into his arms, sobbing uncontrollably. He held me tightly, whispering, "I love you and you are everything to me," but the hurt and fear remained. I couldn't listen, couldn't trust completely. Every time he tried to talk, I would explode. "Go away," I shouted, voice raw with tears. He didn't argue. He quietly packed his things and left again. The flowers, sweet messages, and random hugs I had once cherished now felt like distant luxuries, reminders of the fear and jealousy that had overtaken me. I blamed myself. I knew he was innocent, that it was all in the past, and that he had chosen me. But my heart was still in turmoil. Every thought of the video tightened my chest. Every memory of their smiles burned into my mind, and I wondered if I was strong enough to overcome the ghosts of his past. For days, I lived in chaos loving him, yet terrified of losing him, pained by jealousy. I realized that love isn't just about happiness and romance. It's about facing fear, jealousy, and past shadows, and ultimately choosing each other despite everything haunting the present. In the silent moments between tears and racing thoughts, I understood true love is tested not only by joy and passion, but also by confronting fears, jealousy, and past ghosts, and still choosing each other in the end. After days filled with tears, tension, and anxiety, he remained patient with me. He didn't rush me, didn't blame me, but quietly showed his love through small yet meaningful gestures, flowers appearing on the table, gentle messages reminding me I was loved, unexpected hugs from behind, simple yet warm dinners, and those soft, fleeting "I love you" moments that made my heart melt every time. One evening, I finally decided to open up. I want to talk," I said, my voice trembling. Deep down, I knew I had to be honest. We sat down together under the soft yellow glow of the lights, the quiet only filled with the ticking of the clock and our steady breaths. I poured out all my feelings, the pain, jealousy, and fear I felt when I saw the video and her messages. I cried uncontrollably, but he didn't interrupt, didn't judge. He held my hands tightly, his gaze full of tenderness, as if trying to transfer calm and trust into me. He said, "I know you're scared, you feel jealous, and that's completely natural. I'm sorry I didn't block her sooner, that I unintentionally let her think there was still a chance. But you need to know, you are my present, my future, and everything I need. I love you, and only you. His words felt like light breaking through the darkness inside me. My heart softened, the pain slowly easing. We began rebuilding trust together, sharing thoughts, worries, and hopes for the future. Each evening, we spent time talking, laughing, or simply sitting quietly together, feeling each other's presence. I realized that peace and happiness didn't come just from sweet words or romantic gestures, but from going through hardship together and still choosing to stay by each other's side. To regain my confidence, I started attending Pilates classes with a few close friends. Every session reminded me of my own strength and self-worth. I learned to love myself, and little by little, the insecurity caused by his past no longer controlled me. He also made sure I could feel his love in everyday life. Surprise dinners with my favorite dishes, little handmade notes, spontaneous hugs, and gentle messages throughout the day. Every act reminded me of his sincerity and unconditional care. We talked about the past, not to assign blame, but to understand and heal. He shared his experiences, admitted his own mistakes, and explained how he now viewed our relationship. I shared my fears and vulnerabilities, and he listened, holding me close and reminding me that I was the one he cherished most in the world, day by day. Those tender moments, embraces, kisses, and repeated I love yous gradually erased the ghosts of the past. I realized that love isn't just about romantic gestures or grand actions, it's about patience, compassion, and the ability to face challenges together. For the first time after all the turmoil, I felt true peace with him. I knew that no matter how painful the past had been, our present and future were ours, and our love was strong enough to overcome any shadow. I began to fully trust, to open my heart, and to embrace the happiness that awaited us. After all the trials, the tense days, and the tears, we finally stood strong together. There was no more doubt, no more shadows of the past, only genuine, enduring, and complete love. That morning, I woke up feeling a lightness in my heart. He had prepared breakfast, toast with a comforting aroma, hot coffee, and small flowers on the table. He looked at me with a warm smile and simply said, "Good morning." My love, my heart felt like it could burst from happiness. We sat together, sharing our plans for the future and talking about the small yet meaningful moments of life. I realized that true love isn't just in grand gestures or sweet words, it's in these everyday moments, when two people choose to share life together. That evening, we went for a walk by the lake, the same place where we had celebrated some of the turning points in our relationship. The moon reflected on the water, a gentle breeze brushed past, and we held hands, feeling the steady presence of each other. I smiled at him, and he softly said, "You are everything to me, and I will always be by your side." In the following days, we continued to build our love through small acts, sweet messages during the workday, surprise dinners, spontaneous hugs and kisses. Every action reminded us that love is a daily choice, and we chose each other again, stronger than ever. We also looked back at the past, not with regret, but to learn and heal. He shared the stories of what had happened with his ex, why he hadn't blocked her sooner, and his regret about being cold to me in the early months of our marriage. I listened, empathized, and understood that everyone has a past, but what matters is the choice they make for the present and future. One weekend, We cooked together, laughing and sharing little stories in the kitchen. Sometimes it was just small, ordinary details, yet each moment made our hearts feel warmer. I realized that it was these simple, shared moments, feeling the presence and care of each other, that formed the strongest foundation for love that night. Before going to sleep, he hugged me from behind and whispered, "You are the most amazing woman I've ever met. I love you today, tomorrow, and forever." My heart fluttered with happiness, and for the first time after all the storms, I felt absolute peace. Our love was no longer clouded by fear, jealousy, or insecurity. It had become trust, compassion, and a daily choice to continue together. We had overcome the ghosts of the past, and now, complete happiness belonged to us, a true, enduring, and peaceful love. In that moment, I understood that love isn't always easy, but if both hearts are patient, sincere, and willing to forgive, happiness will come in the end, and it is sweeter than anything we have ever experienced.